Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Razan Pereira. A senior United Nations official said India has set an example on the world stage by committing to beat plastic pollution and showcase best practices and innovations to overcome the challenge. Speaking ahead of the World Environment Day on June 5th, to which India is the global host, Sabha, director of the UN Environment Programme's Division of Communications and Public Information, said India is very active in tackling issues related to environmental pollution. He commended India's commitment in overcoming the challenge of plastic pollution. India has set an example in beating plastic pollution at the world stage by showcasing best practices and innovations, he added. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the dangers of plastic. Joining me on the program today are Siddhanta Das, Director General Forests, Chetan Chauhan, Deputy National Affairs Editor, Hindustan Times, Professor C.K. Varshney, environmentalist, and Dr. Amit Munjal, cardiologist, W. Pratiksha Hospital. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Professor, I'd like to begin with you, of course. First, let's try and put into perspective how toxic is plastic and how big a threat is plastic to us.
You see, plastic is made of artificially from petroleum products, and it has got many different kind of complex organic compounds which are very toxic. And as we use plastic, most of these compounds gradually release and they seep out. And as a result, what we find that they enter into our body through a long process of food chain. At the same time, when we discard plastic, once use plastic or even second time use plastic, it does not degrade because nature does not know how to handle this newly created material. And as a result, it remains as a waste and it keeps on accumulating. And secondly, that as the wear and tear goes on, very small particles of plastic are formed, which we call as microplastic, which are less than 5 millimeter in diameter or even lesser. And the plastic usage is increasing very, very widely. And you know, today we are using 330 million tons of plastic every year, which is adding to the waste. Very small quantity is only recycled, but large amount of it really ends up in either solid waste dumps or finally in the rivers and the valleys and so on. And as a result, we find that the landscape becomes blighted and these fine particles really enter into food chain. And even sometimes it may not be wrong to say that the marine organism that we are eating, perhaps along with this, a small dose of plastic is also we are eating. There is no corner of the earth left, right from Arctic to Antarctic, where plastic is not present in large quantities. In fact, in Pacific, there is a large waste plastic island that has been formed, which is creating a hell of a problem and is interfering with the marine food chain and reducing the yield of the fisheries, at the same time affecting the well-being of the people and the livelihood. So I think the plastic is entering into our food chain. It affects, it's one of the major health disruptor.
Okay.
It really changes our endocrine system. It affects as a cancerous chemicals are produced and so on. The plasticizers are special chemicals and they are the really great villain. Sure. And because of their toxicity, plastic is very, very harmful to the human beings, to the animals, and to the plants, and on the whole, to the environment in a big way. Sure. It really reduces the productivity and the vitality and the resilience of the environment in a very, very significant way.
All right, points taken. Let's now, talking about the health hazards, let me go across to Amit Munjal now and find out what are the real health hazards for humans as far as plastic is concerned.
So with plastic and all, real health hazards are like it can cause birth defects, genetic defects, like some cancers also, like carcinoma of stomach, lung problems like chronic bronchitis, skin problems, eye problems like visual defects, ear deafness, and all routine problems like coughing, watering from the eyes, and some skin problems also, which
So this happens when you consume plastic in large quantities, minimal exposure to plastic, or what exactly is it really?
So minimal exposure doesn't cause much hazards, but when we are consuming in day-to-day life, like we are eating foods packed in plastic containers, drinking water which are bottled in plastic bottles and all. So slowly, gradually, it, like sir told, it enters our food chain, build up in our bodies, and then it start causing problems and all.
Right. Okay. Let me bring in Chetan Chauhan into the picture now. So the problems have been addressed by both the previous speakers as far as what the hazards of plastic are concerned. How do we deal with the problem, Chetan?
I think there are manifold ways in which it can be dealt. Awareness is one of the biggest factors which can play an extremely important role. I think that the plastic waste, how hazardous it is, it should be introduced in school curriculums. In the environmental studies in schools, students should be told that how plastic is bad for the health. And second is, I think the use of recycling of the plastic. In India, the recycling of the plastic is very less. It is only 9 to 10%. But I think we should have to set up industries, give incentive to industries for recycling of the plastic. One thing we should not forget, that the plastic, which is less than 50 microns, is manufactured by very small scale units. A large number of poor people who are not well good enough, they are associated with this industry. So wiping out the plastic industry is not a solution. We have to look for alternate to plastics, which are biodegradable, which can be recycled. And the incentive to recycling has to be even much more. Second important factor is the PWM rules, plastic management rules, which the Central Pollution Control Board introduced a few years ago. The rules have not been effective. We have to make rules which are implementable, which ensures that all the stakeholders are part of it. As of now, I think the rules are, the approach is from the top to the bottom. You are trying to enforce certain set of standards for all the plastic manufacturers. So I think if the approach is from bottom to up, if you take all the rag pickers, the small manufacturers into consultation process and make these rules more implementable. The municipal bodies are required to register all the plastic manufacturers. I'll give you an instance of Delhi. Only a few plastic manufacturers of the thousands which are there have registered. The municipal corporations don't have any sort of wherewithal to implement these rules.
Right.
So if it is a voluntary set, where the people come forward, the manufacturers come forward, okay, we can do this, we can do that, we'll ensure that the rules are implemented, then the implementation will happen. But apart from that, and some good examples are also there, like in some of the hill stations in Shimla, in Himachal, in Kashmir also, the plastic ban has happened. It has happened on basically two reasons. One is the enforcement.
Has that had any effect really on the
Basically,
environment?
if you go to Shimla, you will not find plastic. Nobody is giving you any product on plastic. Second, it starts the habit of you going to a market with a bag.
Right.
So that whatever you buy, the vegetable, fruit, you can carry in your bag. So that sort of a habit has to be inculcated across, because then you're not dependent on the plastic bag.
Better awareness and better habits
awareness,
is what?
and then the strict enforcement. In the hill stations, the fine is imposed irrespective of who the person is. And even the shopkeepers are told that if you'll keep plastic, there will be a fine on you.
Enforcement and awareness is the right way forward, is what Chetan Chauhan is suggesting. Let me bring in Siddhanta Das now into the picture. You know, what steps has the government taken, or is the government going to take to deal with this particular problem?
You see, plastic is something which we have got used to very well. Because, you know, when plastic was introduced as a polymer, it was considered as a panacea, it was a something. So everybody got used to it. Then, in fact, in the early days, people used to say that use plastic and save trees, because it's going to save all those things. But later on, as Professor Barsani has said, now people have come to realize that this is not, so you have to wean away from the use of plastic. So what government would like that, it has to be involved with the people, because people are used to it. There's so much of people's livelihood is in there. So first take is on the ban on the single-use plastics. Suppose you are using and throw it. Like suppose in many of your, you see, marriages and parties and all that, plastic spoons, plastic forks, plastic plates, which are just one use and throw. Similarly, we have this plastic razors, just one use and throw. Those are actually, the bulk is high, and those are causing a lot of problem. Second thing, as you said, that is carry bags that we are seeing. then multi-layer plastics. When you are talking of recycling of the plastics, if it is a multi-layer, it is more difficult to use that. So these are the areas we would like to first focus on and build the people's awareness on it, make it a mass movement and get it there. And in fact, if you see in the wildlife and all our national parks and sanctuaries, we have tried to make it plastic free. Nobody will get into that and whatever will be that, because there are further repercussions. You know, in that wildlife area, you have this
that having been said, Mr. Das, how do you control someone, you know, getting into a national park with water bottles? It's plastic at the end of the day. They can dispose it in the forest, you know.
In fact, what we are trying to do, no, you cannot take the water bottles, or if you are taking the water bottles, so far they have done that, you make an inventory of what you are taking, you bring it back. You don't leave it inside. No, let's say multi-layer, this is suppose packages which are having this thing should not be, are not allowed. And suppose the bottle is somebody is carrying bottle, then he has to repair and bring it back. So that way, so that nothing is left in the forest or the sanctuary where they'll be, because that has an impact, because plastic is something which really, as he has said, doesn't degenerate. You can't burn it, you can't bury it. If you bury it, it will create a light, it will not. And if you burn it, it will release toxins. Only it can be coincident. But suppose in a limestone factory or cement industry, at a very high temperature, it can be co-processed with coal, and then you can also extract the energy from that. That's all. But otherwise, just burning in open is the most dangerous thing to do. So that's why you want to keep the forests and the pristine areas free from plastics.
Sure. You know, Professor Vashni, as is being suggested by several of the other speakers as well before you, you know, recycling could possibly be one of the options of dealing with this particular menace. Do you think that's the answer, or what needs to be done? How do we deal with this gigantic problem that's staring us in the face?
You see, recycling of the plastic is no solution. In fact, it only multiplies the problem. Because the unfortunate part is, as we recycle, the quality of the plastic keeps on deteriorating. And after 1 or 2 cycles, the plastic, that recycled plastic is of no use. And in fact, India is one of the recyclers. We are one of the scavengers of the global plastic. We are importing. Our policy has been so far very, I should say, flexible. Sometime in 2015 we have banned, 2016 under pressure we have again said that all right, in the coastal areas where we have got export zones, we can do recycling. It's not a question of just geographical segregation. Plastic is a plastic. Wherever it is, it ultimately ends up in the environment, and it is our problem. Another thing that I want to flag very clearly, it is not a question of certain kind of plastic bags which is a problem. Plastic as a whole is a problem. In fact, even human parts are made up of plastic. Even your cosmetics are made up of plastic. I mean, they are microplastic which are very, very serious. So the question is that even smaller fractions of the plastic are likely to end up in our veins and create a problem.
I'm sorry to cut you short, Professor, but you know, it's become so much of a part and parcel of our lives.
So I think
so how do you deal with it?
So I think the first thing is, as China has done, they are one of the major importers of the used plastic and recycling. They have completely stopped it. And the chances are that we are going to really do with that kind of a ban which China has imposed from this year. They are just not importing even a fraction of the old plastic. They were the major importers. So we should not get into this. And the second thing is that we should really put a major effort in research so that we have got a plastic where the monomers can be easily separated and they can easily reassembled. Therefore, the recycling becomes very, very convenient, and every time we get a best quality of plastic, which is not possible with this kind of a plastic. So I think a very serious research effort has to go. And secondly, we have to scrutinize packaging very carefully, because once you buy a shirt, all the packaging is immediately discarded. So it is a very big threat as a solid waste. So I think there is a certain kind of streamlining of the packaging for which we have to look very carefully. As he said, multi-layer plastic is very, very nutty problem, and we have to find out an alternative solution, which is possible, but we have never bothered about it. So I think these are some of the areas where we have to look at, and I think the environmental message on this day should be to cut down the use of plastic. The way we have learned to use it was the wrong way, and now it is time for us to really correct our steps.
Okay, so self-regulation and self-awareness is the best way to go forward, is what the professor is suggesting. Let me bring in Amit Munjal now once again into the picture. As far as some of the diseases associated with plastic are concerned, what are the kind of diseases that one can contract as a result of ingesting plastic? And also, we've seen, you know, from a common man's perspective, the use of microwaves has become very rampant these days. People use plastic containers, cling wraps, and other such kind of plastic, devices or containers, let me put it that way, to heat their food. So what kind of an impact will that also have on a person's health?
Because when we heat food in plastic containers and all, then it break down into small particles, transfer the toxins to the food particles, or whether water or anything else. So it will get into our body. Then it will cause starting the harmful effects, like for skin rashes and all, something like bronchitis. Further, you can have eye problems also, like watering from the eyes. And in the long term, like cancers also, birth defects, genetic problems. So it's better, sometimes it's told ki not to heat the food in the plastic container. If it says ki it's microwave safe also, then not to heat food in the plastic containers. Use the like glass containers and all. And these days summers are there, so it's like if you keep a plastic bottle in your car and within 15-20 minutes it started releasing toxin in the water. So it's also said ki don't drink that water which you have placed in your car for a long time, and if your car is parked in sun for a long time.
Sure. So that having been said, Chetan Chauhan, is it time that we had a major lifestyle change so as to deal with the problem?
Lifestyle, definitely. I agree with you that people should discard using plastic, and there has to be awareness. People have to be told that how plastic is bad for the health, ecology, environment, how it's degrading the system. But apart from that, I think one thing that the government can do, like on the cigarette packs, there's a warning. On the plastic bottles or the plastic products, there should be a warning telling people that if you are using plastic, this can happen to you. And I think there should be some sort of incentive for the companies which come with products in alternate, maybe a glass bottle.
What could be the alternative?
I think plastic, but glass bottle, glass is, it may be having some sort of a ecological impact, but still better alternate than plastic. I think scientists will definitely have some sort of a alternative to plastic bottles also. So because many of the European countries, there is an incentive if you sell water in a glass bottle, there is a tax incentive.
Okay.
So there is many ways in which the government can promote non-plastic products, and people can also do a lot by saying that I will not buy something on plastic. So no to plastic is a campaign which the government can promote. If in the market the people are not buying things in plastic, the message will also go to the industry. The industry will look for alternatives. The industry will also invest in research in the alternatives. So that is the only way you can push the plastic out. I don't think that through government regulation is it possible to push the plastic out, because in many of the countries it has been experimented, but it has not been very successful. So unless people try to push it out, I think it will be very difficult. But the government can use plastic in road construction.
Right.
The government can use plastic to generate energy also, which has been done successfully in some states in the United States also. So there are ways in which the plastic can be used. But the biggest problem is the municipal corporations, I think. Segregating plastic, because most of the plastic reaches municipal dumps. And when it reaches municipal dumps, they degrade the land in and around municipal dumps. In many places, the drains, which are very close to municipal dumps, get polluted with plastic.
Right.
And so, at the municipal level, I think some sort of intervention the government should do.
Sure. I think we've got a hashtag, and probably we need to take that hashtag forward and promote it. Hashtag say no to plastic. All right. Siddhanta Das, as far as the ecosystem is concerned, what kind of an impact does plastic have on the ecosystem, especially forests, your area of specialty, and as well as the wildlife?
You see, ecosystem or the wildlife, forest, these are all intricately and very delicately linked to each other. So when you protect a tiger, actually you are protecting the entire system, because for a survival of one tiger, you need about 500 cheetahs. For 500 cheetahs, you need so much of a fodder, so much of a grassland. For so much of fodder, you need so much of a moisture. And plastic can get in anywhere. It can get into the intestine of these grass eaters. it can choke the water supply. So what happens, this can break the very delicately balanced system of both flora and fauna. So, and since it doesn't degrade, it doesn't get into the ecosystem at all. So it remains an alien in the ecosystem forever. So that's why we want to keep it off at least the pristine ecosystems. Now see, the biggest hazard for practicing is the seas, the oceans. There's so much of a plastic is getting into the ocean, that is getting into the system, marine ecosystem, and that is impacting everybody, including human being. So we have to have, so there is a way that to wean out from the use of plastics and maybe extracting energy out of it, that wealth out of waste type of, that suppose we can co-process it, we can get some whatever energy is there, we can also extract that, and also gradually find the alternatives. Good use, good practices. That suppose carrying some your household things in a cotton bag may be initially slightly inconvenient, but once you get used to that, you will not. But once we are completely going hands free to the shop and expect a plastic bag to come, there the problem starts. Suppose we carry a cloth bag, or will be insisted that the owner of the shop will sell you a cloth bag, then the case will gradually change. And this is a thing which I have to do now. We have to beat the plastic. This year's theme of World Environment Day.
Yes, indeed. We do have to beat plastic, and the time to act is right now. It's already probably a little too late. The professor will tell us that. Professor, but you know, as far as plastics are concerned, are there any safe plastics that we can possibly use, or plastic is a complete no-no?
Actually, you have raised a very important issue. There are now good signs available on the horizon. Of course, some more work has to be done, but I think new plastics have been formed which are made out of organic substance, where on breaking we will find that the molecules of which the plastic is made can separate very easily and they can be reassembled, which means that recycling will always give you a fresh and a good quality of plastic, and that is possible. So I think these new developments are on the horizon. The only thing is we have to pick them up. And I think
is it cost effective? Because at the end of the day,
no, it is not yet cost effective. But the question is, it will not become automatically cost effective. I think the governments have to really provide money and support to make it and to really push this research forward so that it becomes cost effective. Once you start producing in large quantities, it will keep on becoming more and more cost effective. But one thing I must to say, that since plastic is so dangerous, it is time that United Nations and the governments of the world should consider bringing out a convention like CFCs and others, so that we stop globally this menace. Because it is not important that one country becomes active and the rest can sleep. The question is that their waste will ultimately get into the ocean and to the fisheries. So I think it is not one nation problem, it is a global problem where we need a global convention, which is right time for us to think about it and prepare for that. This is my suggestion.
Sure. Yes, Mr. Das.
I'd just like to say that, just carry on where Professor said, there's biodegradable plastics. There is something you say algae, microalgae, blue-green algae. That is a biggest or fastest way of carbon sequestration. By growing algae, let's say we sequester the carbon dioxide being released from the thermal power plants. We grow algae. And from this algae, we can process to get biodegradable plastics. Which the biodegradable means it will get into the system. It will not remain not degraded for long, it will immediately degrade. So those can easily be substitute of this plant. But right now you have said that it may not be cost effective right now, but in the long run, when if you give the economy of scale, it can be made cost effective.
Sure. Chetan Chauhan, you know, we have not spoken about the impact of plastics on the waterways and the ocean. Now that's a big problem area, isn't it?
It is, I think, an immensely huge area. Animals also.
Yes. No, we've spoken about animals.
Animals, no, I'm saying domestic animals.
Yes.
It's not the wild animals.
Certainly.
Cows or the buffaloes are the mainstay of our economy, the farm economy. The government is also focused on it, that we have to improve the milk production. And we've seen many parts of India, the deaths of cattle because of plastic is increasing. There was a recent report in one of the states about that 8 or 10 kgs of plastic was found in the stomach of a cow. So it is becoming an increasing problem, not even in wild forest areas, in waterways. It is coming close to the homes of farmers.
Yes.
So it is a problem. Oceans, it is a huge problem because a recent study said that about 60% of the plastic which gets into oceans is from India or from South Asia. So it is, and apart from that, if you see the waterways, the small drains, the rivers, it is full of plastics. They get choked. So I think plastic is such a huge menace now that you will have to create some sort of a huge revolutionary awareness program to control it. I say that when I say no to plastic, it is a way to only control it. You cannot eradicate plastic from lives of people very easily. You have to come with alternates, but you have to create that sense that using plastic should be the last alternative, not the first one. So, and I think it can happen because a large number of young people are really aware about the ill impacts of plastic, and they are willing to take an alternative if it's available.
Sure. Okay, as Amit Munjal, let me get a closing comment from you first, of course. As far as plastic is concerned, what is the solution from our point of view?
Solution is, like as sir mentioned, key first and foremost is awareness. Then government should do some law enforcement also. Like we ourselves should feel that we should not accept food in like plastic containers. Instead, we should accept in glass containers and or metal containers. Like we say no to plastic bottles, use a glass bottle more. Like cut down the use of plastics in our day-to-day daily life.
Sure. Professor, closing comments from you.
I think it is important that we should have a very, very vigorous public campaign to really reduce plastic usage. We should start this campaign from school, we should take it to the college, and we should, so it's a multi-pronged attack. And in fact, the lawmakers need to be exposed to the dangers of the plastic, because nobody can be spared with this. Warming food in the plastic utensils, using plastic in microwaves, etc. is very, very dangerous. Using plastic bottle and keeping them in their refrigerator is very dangerous. So I think all this need to be replaced by glass or metal. This is number one. Second, the most important thing is, and it is very interesting to know that California as a state has really put a warning sign on shirts which have got synthetic yarn in them, to say that every wash releases so many microfibrils which affect our health. Be warned. So I think this kind of a campaign and this level of campaign we have to think. It's not a question of slow start. We have to plunge into this campaign in a big way if we really wish to stop plastic, and if we really wish that this year's the World Climate Day message really reaches and remains something which is more substantial and which is more lasting.
And what's the message on World Environment Day, since we are the host country, Siddhanta Das?
As the host country, this thing is beat the plastic. So it's a thing, it's a war, you can say, and we have to combine. Everybody has to get into this and this awareness, and gradually, as I said, that reduce the use of plastic, and whatever plastic waste, how to dispose this stuff, how to use that and convert that in waste to wealth. As I said, that you can co-processing with the coal and other incineration of that.
Okay. All right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. The message today is loud and clear. It's a war against plastic, and it's a war that we all have to join together and fight, or else it is we who are going to lose. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.